This video is sponsored by Proton Mail. The number of people who think this title sarcastic blows my mind.
Not anymore.
Ragatha said some things to Jax, and the way people have left to take them in the least charitable light imaginable doesn't surprise me. As yeah, of course the flawed but well-meaning caretaker of the digital circus would get just raked across the coals for fumbling her way into an insult, while the man who shot her in the face for kicks is getting the "oh, he's complicated" card. And I find that annoying, so much so I've decided to make this video, as it's time we take a look at the actual flaws of Ragatha's character, not the assumptions and not the weird propaganda about people pleasers being manipulators, or how Gangle is somehow actually in the wrong here. That's an insane take, but yes, I have seen it. But we're gonna ignore that because too much to get into. So instead, we're just gonna do Ragatha as a person, the kindness, the insecurities, all the stuff that make her who she is, and the utter insanity of how fandoms will hold female characters to an insane double standard, while dick-riding dudes who are terrible 99.9% of the time, but they're given a pass because they have the potential to be good. And yes, the Ragatha hate is giving me Katara flashbacks, and here's why.
And then you just act like you never do anything wrong and everybody loves you, when in reality you just fuck everything up for everyone else!
But first, fun fact. Every time you send an email, there's an invisible parade of governments, corporations, and data gremlins who just have a front row seat to all of your personal business. It's like CCing your nosy neighbor, the IRS, and that one person who's stalking you on LinkedIn. And as usual, you didn't ask for any of them to be bothering you. So naturally, given the complete lack of privacy options these days, we have to turn to solutions of our own, and in this case, Proton Mail. For those of you who don't know, Proton Mail is the one email service that doesn't treat your privacy like a casual suggestion. Based with Switzerland with some of the strictest privacy laws on the planet, your data can rest safe and secure with them versus anywhere else in the world. You can rest easy knowing that they'll protect all of your information, and this is like the craziest part, they'll actually encrypt it, including from themselves. Which should be like the bare minimum in something called private communications, but here we are. I've been using Proton for a little while now, and they have just destroyed all the spam that I used to be just drowning in. So I personally cannot recommend it enough. So if you're tired of Gmail treating your inbox like a piñata with ad revenue, switch to Proton Mail. It's free to start, no strings attached. They've got paid plans for more storage if you need them. And best of all, well, it kind of makes you feel like a spy every time you hit send. Go use the link in the description, check out Proton Pass as well, which also encrypts all of your passwords and the like. It's free to set up, and with Proton, we're able to remember that yes, our emails should be for us. So context for the 12 people who click this and don't know what the digital circus is. People are trapped in a game and they can't die. That's it. That's all you really need to know to get the point. The main character is a jester turned, well, thirst trap named Pomni, who just recently got trapped in the circus, with this putting her in the crosshairs of what is implied to be years of intergroup conflict. She survived the initial shock, learned that while hopeless, they can still find meaning in their existence. With all the seemingly one-note characters opening up to reveal complex people dealing with an insane situation, with the two extremes in the party being Ragatha and Jax.
What do you, the viewers, think it is?
Jax is an asshole who'd rather bully everyone else in a vain attempt to pretend he's just a cartoon character to bury his lame guilt over the death of a friend, denying his and everyone else's humanity in the process as he mentally strips them of all their complexity to justify being the funny one, the jerk comedic relief character who annoys those around him. But in practice, he is just punching down on the most vulnerable members of the circus, which makes him a bully, no matter how much he's hurting on the inside. As yes, he has trauma, just like everyone else in here, and none of them are dumping their friends into hot oil for kicks. Like, even if you think Jax isn't a bad person deep down, I think it's hard not to agree that he's a bad person for everyone else to be around. Now, while Jax has made selfishness and prioritizing his own amusement over the well-being of the others his thing, Ragatha occupies the other side of that spectrum, overcommitting to selflessness and taking care of everyone else in the circus. When Pomni first shows up, Ragatha tries to be her best friend and caretaker, constantly checking on her and worrying about how Pomni's doing. This attention is appreciated, even if it does become like a little bit too much at times. Ragatha wants to be the sponge that will absorb and fix all of Pomni's problems right away, with the other characters like Kinger having to remind her that take a breath, step back, let Pomni process what's happened. I know that Jax and Ragatha's approaches seem like they have fuck all to do with one another, besides being opposites. So let me just say the subtext out loud. What connects Jax and Ragatha is how they both devalue themselves to being just their roles in order to bury the stress and pain of existing in the circus. Jax wants to reject his pain and does so by devaluing himself just being a cartoon character. Ragatha similarly devalues herself by being the caretaker who starts to spiral if she can't be helpful. They both have created roles for themselves to play while ignoring the deeper psychological issues that are afflicting them. Though, when it comes to coping mechanisms, and as people, it's clear which one of them is worse for those around them. Like, my bitches, my hoes, my non-binary bros. We have to be for real here. In the grand scheme of things, when it comes to how characters react to Jax's treatment versus Ragatha's, there's no contest who they prefer. As we got Gangle over here shivering at just what Jax might do to her after she decided to not be on his team. Like, that's it. She didn't want to be on his team, she stood up for herself, and she is freaking the fuck out over it. Admitting that Jax has beaten down her self-esteem so badly that she at times finds it hard to imagine herself as being anything more than his plaything. In contrast, Ragatha's kindness just doesn't always feel genuine. That's it. That is the negative side effect to others from Ragatha's actions. I hate to say it, but fuck your headcanon. This is what they're like, and this is how they do things. This is how they generally treat the rest of the cast, and somehow despite this, Ragatha is given less grace than Jax and more critique for far lesser shit.
Well, it's better than turning her into some insensitive jerk who deflects everything.
To break down the initial thing that got Jax offenders in a tizzy, Pomni and Jax are hanging out in the suggestion box adventures, this one being just a chill night under the stars, with Pomni being the only one who hasn't grown jaded to Jax's behavior, so she's able to actually talk with the guy. With the lack of a wall made out of burnt bridges getting in the way, Jax allows himself to be a little genuine with Pomni, asking questions that he wouldn't normally ask anyone but himself, like if Gangle is actually capable of being happy. And this is important because the truth of this could break the way he categorizes every member of the circus and force him to admit that his actions do matter. With Ragatha walking over at this point and suggesting that Gangle might be able to if Jax wasn't bullying the shit out of her. Pomni, having been around enough to have been on the receiving end of Jax's hijinks, asks him the question that basically everyone's had at this point.
Do you have any actual friends?
And yeah, he doesn't have any. Nobody really seems to fuck with him based on, well, his own actions. Though at this point, Ragatha chimes in with this very controversial,
Not anymore.
So, the big thing about this is that Jax had a friend who abstracted. His name was Ribbit, and we know nothing about his and Jax's relationship. Maybe they were sweet kids, maybe they were terrible and brought out the worst in each other. We do not know. All we know for certain is that Jax still mourns for Ribbit, blames himself for it, and thinks the others blame him as well. So the loudmouth goes deathly quiet when Ragatha brings up him having no friends, with Jax and many fans seeing this as a jab against Ribbit, when no, that's not what she was talking about. It was herself.
I think I might have failed Pomni. Just like I failed Jax.
Now, I thought this was incredibly obvious based on the scene. So to break it down, Ragatha is immediately frazzled when she realizes what she said, apologizing and trying to explain how she stumbled her way into an insult. Ragatha, for my money, is way too much of a people pleaser to just be this out of pocket. Jax was antagonizing and stressing everyone out earlier, but for Ragatha to go for the throat, to hit this specific nerve, goes against that crippling desire she has to not be hated. Ragatha straight up says she doesn't want Jax to hate her despite not liking him, so I do not believe she intended this to be about Ribbit, with her apologizing for this twice in the same episode, saying it was an accident and she owns up to it. And the fact that people were more mad about this than Jax bullying Gangle for 5 episodes till they have to outright make it so obvious, that is wild to me. Especially since the recent episode shows Jax going 2 for 2 on going for the throat whenever he's made uncomfortable, telling Gangle he liked her better sad after she has spent so many episodes desperately trying to be happy, or telling Pomni he'd immediately forget her if she died tomorrow. Jax, when pressed, will go for things that he knows the other person is insecure about, which is worse in consequences and intent than anything Ragatha did here. And personally, I think regardless of a character's trauma, intentionally hurting others to make yourself feel better is just the step too far. And since characters in this world can feel pain, it makes his actions all the more reprehensible. But instead of people acknowledging that Jax is a good character with terrible actions, and Ragatha is also a good character who makes mistakes, we've seen a rise in some genuinely horrible defenses. Like this one comment I got on TikTok. Also, follow me on TikTok. I have a bunch of people who have been stealing my shit, and now I'm trying to take my name back. There's a bunch of extra content, go check it out. But the comments state that if you believe Jax enjoys hurting others, then the show isn't for you, which, for my money, might be one of the stupidest comments I have ever gotten, as regardless of whether he enjoys it or not, Jax still hurts people, and knowing it's wrong makes him worse. Ragatha hurt Jax unintentionally, immediately apologized and made excuses, before then later giving a more measured apology after yelling at him a bit. She takes ownership of her actions instead of pretending none of it matters, only to throw a fit when anyone gives him pushback and makes a joke at his expense. Mind you, to all like the shippers out there who cared about this friendship, it also looks like one of the reasons Jax started to get buddy-buddy with Pomni in the bar scene was to spite Ragatha.
Wow, the first steps of a budding friendship, right, Ragatha?
Again, he does it because he knows how insecure Ragatha is about her friendship with Pomni, and the idea that she would choose Jax over her would just invalidate her entire existence. That no matter how hard Ragatha tries to be nice, she still would lose to a rabbit who treats everyone else around him like shit. Meaning her coping mechanism and just attempts to be a caretaker were for nothing, making this a personal failure for her. So naturally, she would be resentful of Jax, and after all this work to play nice, Ragatha snapping at him and calling him out on this, while not constructive, you can't really blame her for it as she told no lies. Especially since we now have that scene of him unloading a full clip into her. If neither of them are reacting healthily to an extreme situation, I think I'm gonna side with the girl who lost her temper and said mean things versus the guy who would bully and shatter the self-esteem of the women around him to maintain the illusion of control over his own life. If this were real, that's how I would cut it. But in general, this type of fan favoritism is nothing new.
No wonder they were trying to hack us up. You stole their waterbending scroll.
I prefer to think of it as high-risk trading.
Now, I did an analysis video on Zutara about a year ago where I basically broke down how Katara has to fulfill what I consider to be the worst position on any fictional team, which is the heart. This is in reference to the typical 5-man band archetype of characters where we frequently see characters fulfill certain roles and personality types, with the heart, in my opinion, being the one that gets the most slack for the fewest benefits, whose role in the story is to make sure everyone plays nice and actually worry about their mental health. They are usually the nicest, most empathetic characters, with this then saddling them with the role of being all work and no play. They frequently have to play being the moral center, while the others get to play around with making like more dramatic decisions. This causes hearts like Katara or Steven of Steven Universe fame to be labeled as preachy. The hearts have a tough job having to fight to keep people together when everyone else will have given up, but this strength of character is overshadowed by other aspects of the story, letting their strengths be seen as uninteresting, or worse, a roadblock to the things people apparently actually want to see, with any moral failing on their part getting met with criticism of being a hypocrite rather than appreciated for showing nuance. It's unfair to the characters, but this is just how fandoms have typically moved. Zuko could and did burn down a village and get zero smoke, but Katara stealing a scroll and yelling at Aang has been held against her since the episode aired. And don't let anyone lie to your face about how this is a recent development. I was in the forums, I remember. Now, to explain why things are like this, the caretaker getting the heat while the antagonist is getting praise, well, it's surprising to say, but when it comes down to it, Jax was right.
Why are you always pretending everything's always fine? Like, if you tell someone they're loved and appreciated every day, it just kind of loses all meaning.
Like, I'm not gonna pretend that the other big reason that Ragatha and Katara got so much hate is just misogyny. I think it's okay to admit that, just like we admit that it's okay to dislike a character, no reason needed. But the misogyny, though, in general hatred for women and being overly critical of all of their actions, while male characters can basically do fucking anything and still have stands, and how that connects to Jax's statement, the kindness of these characters goes from like something that is difficult to do in a world set on beating the hope out of them to just being expected. Katara becomes the nice one. She's always got a speech and a shoulder for someone else to cry on. Fans will see these traits and just assume it's inherent to the character. It's who they are. The nice one, with this creating a pedestal that if they deviate from it, is seen as a failing, with these failures resulting in anger and hatred as it makes the character seem like a hypocrite, with the framing of the show often saying that yes, this was a moment where the character was flawed, but even when they apologize or learn from it, those with the strongest reactions won't be swayed by the story looking them in the eye and saying it's okay, the characters have moved on. Some fans will hold a grudge, and if you know anything about nerds, it's that they don't let shit go. If you want an example of this, just ask any Spider-Man fan about One More Day and how Spider-Man sold his marriage to the devil. But in contrast, antagonists or rival characters get pretty much the opposite treatment, as there will often be an endless grace to be found for these characters who do terrible things, as the tiniest bit of human decency is enough to convince people that the character has the potential to change, and it must be applauded. The terrible things they did become part of their past, something that they are working through. It became expected white noise, and it's the good moments that become the defining ones for a lot of fans. And I think this focus on moments when like there's a break in the character's usual routine is why people just latch on to them so hard. Jax is getting the tragic Whoopi defense. Yes, this is a show about empathy, but to be told that we need to give him more, we need to give more understanding, while he is giving none to the rest of the characters, while Ragatha is getting dragged for accidental shade, unsurprising insanity to me. I am fully on board with everything that is happening in the story. I fully trust that whatever's gonna happen is gonna be great, but the fandom conversation around it is where I truly start to lose my mind, as people want to just have like the most charitable interpretations for everything Jax does. That he's bullying Gangle? Oh, maybe he's trying to like toughen her up or like take her mind off of the stress of being in the circus? Oh, he stole everyone's keys? Maybe he's like secretly checking in on everyone's room to make sure that they're not abstracted. These are things I've seen people actually say, when in story, he is selfish. That is like his defining trait, and he's great because of it. But for a lot of people, especially younger fans, I think they find it hard to admit that they like a character who does bad things for no good reason. That is an explanation, but it's not an excuse. Especially when in the circus, everyone is going through the same thing. Kinger lost his wife, but you don't see him terrorizing Gangle over it. And Ragatha, she's done some shit. She's said some things, she is not always the nicest person. She has flaws, like her need to cling on to people who she views as emotionally vulnerable to use them to prop up her own self-worth. She is, in a sense, using them, but the biggest victim of her own actions is herself. Everyone else is at worst questioning how genuine she is, and that she can be kind of annoying. Ragatha's compassion can be seen as condescending with how she infantilizes Pomni, wanting to solve all of her problems and thinking Pomni can't look after herself, both when she first came to the circus and when she starts to befriend Jax. Ragatha was so insecure about Pomni that she would accuse Jax of trying to corrupt the jester, an idea that has some truth in the sense that Jax wants Pomni to treat the circus more like a game, to like see it more like he does, but he's not trying to be malicious in that sense. He thinks they're all just better off that way. And Pomni is a grown-ass woman who can make her own decisions. Ragatha cares, but she's doing too much and attaching an idealized and potentially constraining view of friendship to her relationship with Pomni. Ragatha is jumping to the least charitable conclusions, and assumptions are never good, but when it comes to Jax, well, to quote someone else,
why believe you? You never gave us nothing to believe in.
Also, if you want some trauma sprinkled onto those flaws to make them like excusable, it's all but stated that Ragatha had a very strained, low-key abusive relationship with a very controlling mother. So much so that she doesn't believe that her mom would care if she disappeared into a video game. This leaves us with the impression that Ragatha's excessive fawning over others was a defense mechanism she developed at home, with her repeating that behavior in the circus, responding to stress by helping others and hating herself for any and all faults. With this soul-curdling need to please causing her to want Jax not to hate her, even as she drunkenly admits that she kinda hates him. Ragatha is not a manipulator, she's not really a user, as all those words on the internet imply a negative effect on those she's interacting with, when at her core, she's a good person, but that desire to be nice leads her to restrain parts of herself, causing her to blow up when she does let it out. Ragatha is also on Mordecai levels of foot and mouth syndrome, where any instance of her talking when she is nervous leads her to saying something stupid. Like when she brought up how Pomni and her nearly getting killed by Kaufma was like, oh whoa, wasn't that wild? When she is just terrified of Pomni and Jax's growing closeness. The biggest victim of Ragatha's actions is Ragatha. She'll let some mean things slip out like she did with Gangle, but Gangle, knowing how she is, immediately forgave her, as she knows Ragatha wasn't trying to hurt her, which is more than you can say for Jax. All of this kindness and worry about what others think may not come from the healthiest place, but I will happily give some grace to someone who is trying versus the dude who made bullying others his whole identity. Ragatha is genuinely better than me, as if I was trapped in the circus with Jax, who was still abusing everyone after years of ribbon abstracting, I wouldn't be proud of it, but I'd be name dropping that frog every day if it meant this dude would shut the fuck up. Alright, this has been Sarcastic Course. I wrote this in like basically a feverish state as I procrastinate from writing a much longer Jax analysis video. Expect that to come out very soon. I come down hard at him, but I love him, as his frayed psyche is so interesting to me. Though I do wish Ragatha, of being the kind one and just having some people-pleasing tendencies, got a little bit more love, a lot less hate for a character that the creator themselves has said is a terrible person. Also remember, check out my sponsor, Proton.